everyone, and welcome back to Realizing Resilience. I'm Marisa,
And I'm Alana.
and today we have the pleasure of speaking with Don Scherling. Your career has spanned many different roles and organizations. How has your professional journey as a trainer and clinician evolved over the years?
So I started my career in addiction treatment out of graduate school the first time back in Chicago, and I did about 10 years in addiction treatment. Then I came here to Connecticut, to the Northeast, and did adolescent addiction treatment for about 5 years. And then I did doctoral work. And since my doctoral program, I've been really passionate about both teaching and really good clinical work and offering in my teaching, offering clinical skills to people. And so my trainings are about supporting grief work and recovery and trauma-informed care and behavioral epigenetics now and lifestyle medicine and suicide interviewing to help people in their own lives and in others' lives. So I try to teach clinicians things that are really practical in their own self-care and also can really be helpful to people other than just talking about problems. And so that's my passion and my goal. And I'm blessed now to work in a hospital where I get to teach and do clinical work. That's my two main jobs. And I'm blessed to be able to be now working with Women's Consortium since 2006.
You'll be with us teaching about behavioral epigenetics at the end of April. And I learned a little bit about it just to better understand it, to explain it to our audience, but it's a big concept.
So let me go kind of into epigenetics a little bit more. And so behavioral epigenetics is that our gene expression, all of our cells in our body have the same genetic coding in them. But we have heart cells and we have brain cells and we have many other specialized cells. So that's all affected by which part of the genetic code is read and expressed. And so that's affected very much. So twins at birth will have about 98% complete matching genetic expression in their codes. By 50 years old, they only have about 30% of their genetics are still looking the same. So you may have a twin that's identical at birth, but their lifestyles have diverged, and one of them will have a really healthy and be really robust in terms of medical or physical age, and the other one will be really devastated based on lifestyle. So I was interested in how does that happen, and then I was blessed to be part of a life enhancement program where we partnered, our health system partnered, our wellness program partnered with Canyon Ranch Institute in Arizona. There's one in Lenox as well here in Massachusetts. And we got to learn about this stuff, and I changed my lifestyle. And the three things that I did most, I've always been very physically active, but I stopped eating sugar. And it wasn't immediate. It took me some time to stop eating sugar because it's everywhere and everything. But I really avoid refined sugar almost exclusively, and I don't eat sweeteners much. And now I can't even taste, I don't like them because they don't taste good to me anymore. But that was the biggest one. And then I've always been, struggled with stress management because I have pretty significant childhood trauma, and I would get activated and then stay activated, and it would destroy my sleep and that sort of thing. So I've learned how to manage that stress in a better way, mostly with continuing a lot of exercise, but eating healthy has been the biggest boon to me. I was surprised that, and I've seen this so many times, as the sugar intake goes up, the tendency toward metabolic syndrome and diabetes, type 2 diabetes, and all of these things go up with people's risk. And then that leads to a cascade of other health challenges. So in behavioral epigenetics, we try to emphasize lifestyle, healthy lifestyle. And this is only possible for people with resources. So some people can't do some of these things, but so we want to, instead of having a slow decline after age 40 into illness and death at age 70, 80, 90, 100. We want to have a kind of a squared off pattern. So we want to live healthy, 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 and then drop dead rather than have a slow decline where you lose all your function and get old and frail, if possible. Eventually we will, but probably not necessarily frail if we can keep certain things going. So basically, the 6 pillars of lifestyle are whole food or plant-based nutrition as much as possible, and healthy food in terms of the balance between fats and carbohydrates and that. Carbohydrates are very different. Some of them are really, really healthy, and some of them, like refined sugars, are really not very healthy. However, even sugars, you can eat as much fruit as you want, and it's hard to overdose on sugar with fruit. So they say, eat your juice, don't drink your juice if you're drinking juice. Physical activity is really important, especially a balance between cardio and strength training and stretching, and keeping one's spine healthy is really, really very important. Otherwise, we tend to have really lots of pain and that other syndromes if your spine is not able to be strong and straight. And then stress management, how we manage stress, avoidance of risky substance use. Very, very moderate substance use is usually manageable for people. Restorative sleep is really, really important. And if a brain doesn't sleep, if a body doesn't sleep, a body can go with rest, most of our muscles and all of our systems and organs, but our brains actually need to go through the cycles of sleep, or we get very distressed. And many people struggle with sleep. The sweet spot is about 8 hours to 10 hours per night, and more than that is not good, and less than that is not so good. But there are people that can get by on 4 or 5. They're somewhat rare, but there are people like that. President Barack Obama used to sleep 4 hours, and that seems to be sufficient for him. But most people can't do that. And then social connection is really important. There's lots of people that are really having health issues for lack of connection. And it may be that the only person they ever talk to is a grocery store clerk, and that would be a challenge for them to feel connected and healthy and that.
You're giving a lot of great information. And I had a question when you were talking about kind of like different resources and things that you should do and things to avoid food-wise or exercise-wise. If you're someone who doesn't have access to these resources, whether it's the area you live in or your financial position, do you have any suggestions on what people can do if they don't have access to these things?
Yeah, so I should have said this earlier, but so breathing is number 1. That's a matter of minutes. Number 2 is hydration. That's a matter of hours. Sleep is number 3, surprisingly, but that's a matter of days. Food or nutrition is a matter of weeks, and exercise is a matter of months. It's not good to go months without exercise, but you can live without exercise for months. So breathing, hydration, sleep, and then nutrition and exercise. And then what encompasses all of those are both spiritual connection, meaning and having connections with others that usually bring us some joy and usually can relieve a lot of stress. Our nervous systems are really tuned into other people's nervous systems, and in the presence of others who are anxious, anxiety gets in us. In the presence of others who are calm, calm gets in us. In the presence of others who are joyful, that gets in us as well. So these are really important concepts. And then having a way to be able to be blessed with doing activities that bring meaning in the sense of being helpful and useful and life-giving to other people, that's really an awesome thing. If we love our work, then it's not work, it's more just enjoyment for that. So breathing, hydration, and sleep are the 3 things that I focus on. And it's actually changed my practice in the last 10 years especially, and really especially in the last 5 years. So everybody that comes to me, if they come with wanting to talk about earlier traumas or more recent stress and trauma, or if they come with depression, they come with anxiety, they come with post-traumatic stress, we almost always start with one thing that that tries to find them as a human being before we start looking at them as a person with pain and struggle. So I usually would ask them something like this. I learned this from one of my students here, a psychiatric resident. She said, when you're at your best, what brings you joy? When you're at your best, what brings you joy? So people then say, well, that's kind of a weird question, but almost always clinicians ask, what brings you here? And then they have to start talking about their suffering and their pain. And that's not a good idea, because now we're sinking in the swamp of their despair without getting to who they are as a human being. So I always start with that now. And then we talk about that. And people will say, my little dog brings me joy, or my cats are really amazing and they're intuitive. Or a lot of people talk about those. People talk about their children, their grandchildren. People talk about being in the natural world, in the woods, on a hike, on a sailboat, other things. And some people just talk about waking up to a new day or being with certain people. And some people can't find the joy anymore because they're so depressed or they're so much in pain. But what helps is to say, the last time you ever were having some joy in your life, what was that? And we can usually find that, and then we have a strength that they have that they can talk about. And we aren't just sunk into the swamp of their despair. So that's one thing. So starting to find the person and the patient, and then going into managing whatever's challenging to them with breathing, hydration, and sleep. And then we talk about how they're struggling as well, but not very much, as much as I used to. I used to spend the whole time letting people talk about and narrate their pain, and then they would leave not feeling any better or any different or even more despairing. So most people don't leave with that. And then now in my work with them, and then everybody gets a breathing handout, encouragement to hydrate, and I try to demonstrate that while they're in the office by offering them water and or seeing if they're drinking. And then in addition to that, we also talk about sleep. And if somebody isn't sleeping well, I try to vigorously address that by calling the person that's most likely to help them sort that out if there's something that we can do with medication. And then we also talk about breathing techniques to try and help sleep and help calm the body down.
This reminds me, I have to think about this for myself all the time. That acronym HALT, hungry, angry, lonely, tired.
Yeah.
Where oftentimes it's kind of upsetting how easy it is to solve your emotional distress by just like having a meal or reaching out to a friend. But that's optimistic too, that things like this that are taken for granted as being just basic functions can be so helpful in supporting your mental health.
Yeah, that would be completely in line with lifestyle medicine, because hungry, angry, lonely, tired sort of summarizes it. And if we have those emotional states or distressful states in our physical bodies, then it's very hard to be present. And the whole idea is to live our lives now, not in the past or the future. And so, yes, that's a good reminder from 12-step recovery programs. There's many resources and wisdom there.
And so for clinicians, you talked a little bit about how people can start to incorporate the logic of epigenetics with their clients, but it seems like there are a lot of pieces to it. So I guess what advice would you have maybe for someone who now has all this knowledge, but feels a little bit overwhelmed with where to start using it to support their clients?
Yeah, so I try to help them to say, even if you do one small thing. So usually I would emphasize breathing first and try to settle on at least one breathing tool that they might try. And almost everybody that comes in their second session reports whether they've done that breathing tool or not, or if it helped them or not. And then that gives us some guidance on to how to take the next step. And so almost every session then, in addition to the first one, we talk breathing, hydration, and sleep as a kind of a foundation. If the person is really struggling with depression and suicidal ideation, then we talk about that and safety planning. And then we go into kind of whatever they want to bring and to talk about. And then in addition to that, I've taken to doing less talking myself and teaching. And I try to do more listening. And so, for example, I do a lot of work with people that are in grief, in acute grief reactions, and I'm more quiet. I more let them ponder. So we might talk about something, and then I will sit silent for 3 or 4 minutes. And I tell them I'm present, but I'm not going to redirect their thinking and see what they come up with then, rather than me kind of directing them into a curriculum or something like that of how they should be dealing with their stuff. I try to match, them. If they're really talkative, then I'm not going to be really silent and shutting them out. But if people are coming, but the what brings you joy when you're at your best or when you've last had joy, that usually prompts a discussion that's very different than just starting off with their suffering.
I really like how you broke that down and made it kind of more easier to digest, bite-sized pieces, which kind of brings me to your training that you're going to be having with us on April 30th, the Lifestyle Medicine and Behavioral Epigenetics, an intergenerational story of hope and living well in recovery. And so what could participants who attend this training expect to either experience or walk away with after this training?
Yeah, I hope to strengthen what they're already doing, to try and take care of themselves and their loved ones as much as possible. So, kind of emphasizing breathing, hydration, and sleep as the 3 things. And we will try to answer questions as we go through the training. I have a lot of material, but also there's a really good video about behavioral epigenetics that will be instructive. I'm sorry, ask me the question again so I can focus it.
Just what are participants, what should they expect to walk away with, and how will the day kind of be formatted out?
Well, the people that have been in the training before have said what they really appreciated is that I give them a handout on lifestyle medicine that gives them some summary and some really very actionable things to do. There's a handout called 6 Ways to Take Control of Your Health, Lifestyle Medicine. And these emphasize the 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine. And so they'll get this training, right, in the training. And then we're going to do some small group work on whichever one they pick. So if the person wants to pick to talk about sleep, they'll be in a sleep small group to try and discuss that and maybe get some ideas from each other. And then we'll report back to the plenary again. Which I'm really excited about. That'll be a new thing with this training that I'm doing next with you, to give them these small group experiences, which I think will be better than me presenting all day, which I'm going to do a lot of presenting, but and it's very interactional training, hopefully, in the get-go. And we will try to address what's available to people that they're working with and themselves. So if they're in a community that doesn't have fresh produce available, then we try to address how to try to make that as best as possible, but understanding that some people may not have access to fresh produce. So it's an idealistic thing with lifestyle medicine for people that are really motivated and middle class, upper middle class, and some people won't have options to do that. But we'll try to make it individualized enough in our discussion and consultation that they can figure out what they can do. And people have identified, it was this handout that was most helpful, the one on seafood, healthy, sustainable seafood that was most helpful. This one on avoiding, certain kinds of, mostly about sugar, but also there's so many toxins, especially plastics, in our environment now that we now know is in our brain, in our lungs, in our everything. So we try not to be despairing about that, but also take some action steps that people can feel like they're doing what they can to do that within the bounds of their resources that they have available to. I really emphasize that because I was doing a training way before the pandemic, about 15 years ago, and I said, put on your own mask first. I was giving that example, which is from airplanes, right? So, and everybody looked at me, they didn't know what I was talking about. One woman said, what mask are you talking about? She'd never been on an airplane. So it's not useful to give people resources that they don't have available to them. So taking that in mind, we try to emphasize that we need to know if it's not lack of motivation, it may be lack of resources. So we need to be aware of what resources are there and try to help people access what they can. And actually, there's some now research that's proving that exercise is as good as antidepressant medicine with depression. So can we find a way to do exercise? But people will balk at exercise, especially if they're really struggling with that. So actually, I've now learned from some of my lifestyle medicine physician friends that they don't use the term exercise, they use the term activity. So activity is sweeping your house or making your bed. It's not just going out for a walk. It could be because you're walking around the bed to make the bed. But so activity is a better term than exercise, for example. So we try to find ways to help people access what they can do, not what they can't do, and not overwhelm them with despair, more despair. So those will be some of the things. So I'm looking forward to doing these small groups, one on sleep, one on hydration, one on a diet, healthier diet, one on social connection, and then hopefully they'll be doing a dance between their own personal self-care and the people they work with and their communities. How to emphasize it both in your own life and to let it be accessible to other people around you. So yeah.
That was beautifully stated. I feel a lot more concrete about this concept, and I love how you talk about it like tiering and with the consideration of, especially in impoverished communities, like what people can access. And I love the reframing of exercise as activity, because even for me, that felt kind of dismissive when people would just say, oh, just get out and exercise and you'll feel better. So I just love thinking about it as what can you do to make steps to this
Yeah.
healthier lifestyle within what you have.
Yeah, especially because depression and anxiety makes it impossible to do some of these things because people are too immobilized with fear and despair, and or they don't have access to a gym, or they don't have access to any equipment, but they might have access to a sidewalk. So can we just go out and do some activity on the sidewalk? And I didn't mean just, but can they go out on the sidewalk and engage with somebody? Can they stand on the sidewalk if it's safe and say hello to people or smile at people? And in certain neighborhoods that wouldn't be a good idea, but it may be it's a really an amazing thing that they could find something that they can just smile at people while they're going by. And I walk by a work center for people with developmental challenges and different abilities. And I walk by, and this one guy sees me coming every day, and he jumps up from his table and starts, waving vigorously. And I wave at him, and it's a joyful thing for both he and I. So that little bitty social connection, right? So the natural world is also healing, but some people don't have access to the natural world. They certainly can't go on a hike in the woods because there's no woods available to them. But can they get out and maybe see a little bird flying by or something like that and observe? There was this recent discussion about people that were imprisoned in this dungeon, and they were in a very small space, in a very tight space. the one woman was talking about, they had a steel door that was closed 23 hours a day. And she said if she looked at the door, it just destroyed her spiritual sentiment, and that but if she looked out the window, she could do better. And they actually took that, somebody in the prison took that as a good indicator, and they started having people look out the window, and they began to observe birds outside, and they started doing counts of birds and watching the birds' behavior, and they began to contribute to science in terms of counting bird species in that area by looking out this tiny window out of their prison cells. And they became part of a scientific group then studying these birds. So that was an amazing gift to them and to science. So
Links will be in the description to learn more about Don and his work, and sign up for his training, Lifestyle Medicine and Behavioral Epigenetics, an intergenerational story of hope and living well in recovery, on April 30th. Check out our links below to keep up with us at the Connecticut Women's Consortium. Thank you for tuning in today, and I'll see you next time.